Chuck's the only one, and he's down south. Okay, so let's let this go. Okay. Thanks, guys. Now you want to maintain just a nice constant temperature with little puffs because we could potentially have some false alarm. Not much, but. Okay. So now you feel us picking up a little bit of speed. Now's the time to turn. You're flying, man. Okay, so notice that we've leveled out, and so you want a little burn right now. Because what's happening is you've got a false lift potential as you're gaining speed.
Right.
What that means is the wind going over the top of the balloon is lifting it like an airplane.
Right.
And then once we're up to speed, then that false lift goes away, and you potentially find yourself too far away. Now I'm happy with this direction. What do you think about it?
This is a great direction.
And so I think we ought to just stay straight and level right here.
Okay. So this is my gaining point 2, right?
That's right. What's happening there is the lower wind, as we're descending just very gradually, is going to take us sharper to the left. And so that wind in your face coming down says we're going to slow down and turn from its direction, towards its direction.
Right.
The way you can envision that is that the balloon is in one layer and the basket's in another layer.
Sure.
And as you descend, you feel the new layer of wind, but you feel it relative to what you're doing. What's interesting is as you're going up, it's the opposite.
Makes sense.
So if we feel a wind in our face coming down, that means we're going to slow down. If we feel a wind in our face going up, it means we're going to speed up. We bump up to about 6,000. It's going to give us a little bit of a change. So a couple of visual references out here. You see the big dirt mound. The white building is the Amazon building.
Yep.
The tower is down there in Fountain. This water tower is security. And so the reservoir is, if you went right over the dirt mound, then the reservoir is on the left-hand side. You can see sort of the bowl shape. Okay, so at this stage, how are you doing? How's your physiology? Are you breathing? Heart rate?
I mean, I'm a little excited,
Yeah.
being honest.
Yeah.
Yeah. But otherwise, I'm doing very well. You wanted it at 6,000?
Yeah, about. It's valuable to watch your physiology, specifically your breathing and your heart rate. Primarily because, well, there's two reasons. First is you will make better decisions if you're breathing than if you're not.
Sure.
But when people get excited or stressed, they do stop breathing. So for now, sort of everything's new and exciting. You just got to make sure that you're breathing, otherwise you actually don't internalize very much. The other thing, once you've got some more experience, you can use that physiology as a clue to something isn't right. Once you develop sort of an intuitive feel for the balloon, then it's like, man, why am I so anxious today? Why is my heart rate up? And then you can be looking for what's causing it.
Sure.
And it may not be the balloon.
Right.
It might be that, well, you know, I just had a fight at home, or, you know, whatever it might be.
Right.
Okay, so it looked to me like Chuck came down and almost got a right turn into that neighborhood.
Right.
So I think we'll just sort of hang out here for now. Once we clear over Milton Proby here, what we'll do is we'll spit down and see what direction we're going to get a turn. Right now it feels like we're getting a little bit of a right turn.
Right.
Flying about 210-ish degrees. That's probably one of my favorite temperatures. You've got a lot of window of opportunity that you're not going to over temp it. But it's warm enough that the balloon will perform like it's designed. The balloon is too cold, and less than about 190 is a good illustration. Then it doesn't perform there. Right. Okay, I'm sitting over the side watching what it does. As it goes down, it's getting a little bit of a left turn. It looks like it's speeding up a little bit. So what I'd like to do is, once we get clear of this intersection and we're sort of out in the open field here, I'd like to just gradually drop down a little bit and see if we can pick up some of that left turn. Okay. Now, we're obviously not landing yet, but let's talk about landing positions.
Okay.
What you want to do when you land is you're going to wrap your arm around that, and then you're going to have this red line in your hand, and then you're going to have your other hand on the burner. And so that ought to be a comfortable position for you, at least over time. And then the idea is, one of the biggest things to avoid when you're landing is anytime that you are about to touch the ground, you don't want to have your hand on the trigger. Because what happens to people, and we've seen it many times, is you jump forward and then you lock that trigger open.
Scaring the crap out of everything.
Yep. Now, in terms of passenger positions in a basket like this, there's a lot of debate. There's one argument that says they should face forward because they can see what's happening and they won't be surprised.
Right.
However,
I don't like that.
thinking about the physics, they're leaning here and the first thing they do is this.
Sure.
So I like facing forward if, for example, if it's just the two of us, right? Hold on. I'm okay with that. Otherwise, what I would prefer a passenger do is I'd actually prefer them to either be tucked between the tanks and hanging on here, or if you have two or three people, making sure their belt is lower than the side and then hanging on here. And they can hang on to tank collars, they can hang on to this handle, anything like that. So for example, if you've got a new person, it's just the two of you, a great position is, you know, they got a nice wide stance, they're squatting down, and they're like this.
Right.
And you're gonna face forward, and you're gonna come forward a little bit, but you're not gonna come as far as me.
Right.
And then, you know, it's all one happy family after that. Okay, so let's really gradually just kind of ease down and we'll go down to roughly ground level. We'll level out about 30 feet, make sure that we're always staying above the building.
Right.
And I anticipate that we'll gradually get left as we go.
So I didn't want to hit the trees, so we're going back up a little.
Okay.
Being my first approach like that, I figured over was better than under.
Yep, absolutely. That's why we're practicing here instead of, you know, like a neighborhood.
Right.
And the reason that overburning happens is because intuitively we want the balloon to respond more quickly. And when it's not responding to the input we just gave it, the sense is, I haven't done enough.
Right. Well, you gotta be patient too.
Right. Okay, now you can feel we're right at the top of that curve.
Yeah.
So burn again. Because if you're right at the top of that curve and you burn, then you really
Catch it
flatten out
theoretically.
that descent.
Right.
As opposed to what's common is you start descending, now you're steep, and then you really start that oscillation. We got a ton of running room. This is a great direction. So there's no pressure. So go ahead and burn there. We're just starting that descent. Now what you want to do is regulate that descent to be just gradually stepping it down. While you're doing that, any idea which direction this turns?
I'm assuming that goes out that way, then yeah, the way we're turning.
Right.
In my back that way.
Another burn. Now you want to turn your body so you're watching. Does that feel like enough?
It doesn't, but I haven't.
Really close.
Right.
So now nice. So by only having one turning vent, you run this risk that you're not going to be in the right spot, which is always a little bit uncomfortable. And the nice thing is, with this size balloon, it doesn't really matter if you land sideways, backwards. What does matter is that you're facing the direction of flight and that you're locked in. Okay, remember this lets heat out, so we want to do a little extra burn now. I'm going to let that go early because I anticipate that the balloon already has some rotational momentum. That way I don't over-rotate. One more little bit. Direction. I thought I would see Chuck laid out over here somewhere. Did I not understand where he was?
I thought he was just right of these houses over here.
Yeah, I thought he was right about those tractors there. Okay, so what we're going to do is go ahead and maintain this altitude, and we'll sort of get out into the reservoir area. And then, once we're out in that area, I'm actually going to demonstrate a landing process to you. And at these speeds, we have enough room. Then you can do one as well.
Naturally turning?
Balloons just naturally spin when you transition layers.
Makes sense. When I was flying with Daniel, his instruments were down here. So I had no sense of actual level flight, but best I could tell by horizon. And then we went up high enough that sense of the ground, so I'm trying to do it off a mountain, and that's tough.
Yeah, when you're low like this, it's fairly easy, but when you're high, that's tricky.
And that's, we wanted to get off and clear the field before we had me on the burner, since technically testable.
Yep.
So I feel very backwards.
Yep, feel free, move around, walk around. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and take over for a minute. It's my balloon. Alright. I've got fuel here. So, what I'm going to do is, I'm now facing the direction that we're going. And I'm going to level out And then I'm going to use this vent. I want to see how good it is. And so typically in this plate, I can't vent here, right? So I'll actually climb up that rope a little bit and have it ready. And so what I'm going to do is I'm feeling that wind in my face now. Tells me I'm probably going to slow down, get a little bit of a left turn because the wind's coming out of here. And so now I'm just letting the balloon cool a little bit. You can feel the temperature change. Temperature of the air, I mean, not
Yes,
the balloon.
I understood.
Okay. So now a one-armed vent gives me some vent. Lots of burning. See how I overburned there? So I'm going to vent a little bit. Stay on the vent a little longer. That vent's pretty small. It's working though. I can feel it doing something. Switch over to my parachute here just to get a feel for that. It's quite a bit of vent. I can feel it flutter. And I'm overburning, and if I was patient enough, that would make us go up. But now I'm over venting, and we're going to come in. Keeping the vent open right now.
Okay.
Still open. And now I'm going to just gradually let it up.
Okay.
Make sense?
You kept it open to keep that hot air so we don't go bouncing further?
Exactly. Now we look up whenever we're near the ground like this because the throat is tight and everything. So that concept of overburn and overvent does a couple of things for you. Number one, you don't need the precision on landing.
Right.
And number two, what it does for you is it allows you to change your mind when you're at each step. So if I'm overburning and then I see some, well, I'm already hot.
You're going, so you're good.
So I can bail out.
You don't need to vent at that
Right.
point.
And so then overventing means if I see something, then I'm already cold enough I can stop it quickly.
Right.
And then eventually you'll sort of get that timing of overburn and overvent also leads to a graceful landing.
Sure.
And you'll notice though that I was in an awkward position. That's the sort of the lack of turning vents. That's going to happen.
Right.
And so
Sure.
the biggest thing is I knew, I don't know if you was watching, but I braced myself up in here and then I can get my hip under the level and again, not going to go anywhere.
Sure.
Did you hear Phil saying that they were talking about refilling this now?
Refilling it with
Water.
water.
But it doesn't, I don't see any water and it sort of looks mid-construction to me.
Right. Well, in the middle of the dam, that cutout is new.
It is new, yeah. I don't know what that's doing. So what I'm doing here is I jumped up in order to get just a little bit more south, and I'm going to drop back down into the reservoir, and then I'll turn it back over to you. Okay, right now you feel we're at the top of that climb.
Yep.
And so right now is a good time to burn to be able to level that out.
Right.
I'm going to actually let it descend because I want to be right in the middle of it. And again, We're still flying pretty cold. This is 220. So I'm just going to let it gradually descend on its own. No need to vent. Venting in the air to set up an approach is fine. I'm not opposed to it at all. We just don't need it today.
Right.
So notice that I'm now turning around because I'm feeling like we're rotating. I want to be able to keep an eye on the destination here. And so now I would advise that we're starting to get a fairly steep climb. This is about 450 feet a minute. We've still got a fair distance to go.
Climb?
I'm sorry, descend.
Okay.
We're getting pretty good speed here. That's 600 feet a minute. Now I'm going to start burning aggressively. Notice how quickly we slowed up. I'm going to vent a little bit because I know that I want to be down in the reservoir area. So we were still descending, and I'm just not going to let that heat take the full effect. Now the obstacles in here we got to worry about are fences, of course. That heat catch up a little bit. See how now we're almost perfectly level. And clearly going back to what the heck is up with this wind. It's unpredictable for sure. Now, since I want to see around you, I'm going to move to this side of the basket, if that makes sense. But I'm still locked in with an upright. Still got my hand on a red line and hand on the burner. The plan is to clear these fences. Just for reference, this is about 6 knots. Notice how the balloon's rotating again. If you let it, that'll irritate you. If we had 2 turning vents, I'd be hanging on the other one. This is about 7 knots now. It's tempting to burn more. Okay, so now that we're clear of this fence, if I were to land here, I would vent and burn almost at the same time. See, I'm burning all the way in, and then I'm venting, got my arm around the upright, and get a little bit of that rocket roll. The vent is still open, and then I'm going to let that out. Okay? Up to make sure that I'm not going to burn anything. Right. Okay, you want it back?
Sure, where are we going? So,
Your guess is as good as mine. I think what I'd recommend is let's go ahead and level out here.
okay.
And we'll actually kind of sneak this direction, and then we'll come down and we'll land in that open field where that road goes through it,
Okay.
on the other side of the property. Okay, so if I was flying just on a normal day, I probably would have made that a rip-out landing.
Right.
And the only difference that I would do there is I would just keep the vent open.
Right.
There's not a tremendous amount of difference between a stand-up landing and a rip-out. The only difference is, as the wind speed increases, you want to get the vent open earlier before you touch the ground. Okay, and we've got two sets of power lines out here. We've got the big one,
Yeah.
and then the little one right under it, and the little one continues past that post. So here at sunrise, we're looking at the field just to the south of the trade zone and east of the power lines. So in a rip-out landing, assuming you've got space, then you do the same kind of a thing. You flare it out, and then you open the vent. And the only difference is I would probably have flared it out just a bit higher, maybe 3 or 4 feet, and then open the vent more aggressively and just hang on to it. Because that allows the balloon to cool before you touch the ground. You're not thunking it in,
Right.
but then you're cold, you're not going to bounce.
Right. Right.
Causes the bouncing is a combination of two things. One, it is too much vertical velocity, which you can't always avoid.
Sure.
But then it's also being too warm.
Gotcha.
So I like this track. It'll just sort of take us out to the end of the power lines. I think once we cross those, then we drop down and we just land somewhere out in that field. So, first key to avoiding power lines is you got to see them.
Right.
You got to be looking out for them and always scanning. Obviously, I can't see the wires.
Right. But we can see
You
the
can
uprights.
see the poles.
Right.
And these poles have a nice regular spacing, so it's pretty easy to see When you go back east, they're in the trees. And they'll space the poles so that you can't see them deliberately. They'll put them on edges of fields and that kind of thing. And so you won't see a pole because they'll be tucked in the trees, and then you'll have a string of power lines that stretches out. So you really got to keep an eye on it. The second piece, after you've seen them, ideally, is you always want to be in a level or ascending profile when you're over power line.
Makes sense.
Now that can be sometimes frustrating because you're thinking, man, I really want to get down to get my turn, to get whatever. If that's the case, then and we'll practice this eventually, is we'll actually get down first and then be level or ascending over the power lines, rather than up at 300 feet, wishing we could get down. And then the third thing that catches people is always expect a wind shift towards the power lines. So there are a number of times when people will be flying, let's say, towards power lines. They'll clear the power lines and then they'll land right behind it. What they didn't know is in that last 30 feet, there's a wind shift coming back. So those are the three avoidance principles. Then, if you feel like contacting power lines is imminent, then you want to get the basket as close to the ground as you can possibly get. That does a couple of things for you. The first thing it does is you might feel that imminent danger early enough you could actually land and not touch the power lines. So sometimes you just avoid them altogether with that principle. Whereas if you're low and you feel like, oh shit, I'm going to hit them, trying to burn over them puts you at eye level with power lines. That's big danger. The other advantage to getting it down is that if you do hit the power lines, you have the potential, if you hit them above the equator, that you'll just slide right under. And the basket will be on the ground and you walk away. My data is a little bit old, but as of 2010-ish, 100% of power line fatalities came from fault.
Right, that's what I heard recently, read that.
And that falling can be, the most common is I fly into the power lines at sort of this danger zone and it severs the cables and we all fall. Or we hit it high enough and we jump, at which point anything over 30 feet is fatal. So, as you might imagine, we're going to talk a lot about power lines.
That's fine.
Okay, so now I want to spit over to see what the ground wind is doing. I don't spit until we're in a level profile. One, because I'm not paying attention to the balloon, but then it also gives me better track. Once we drop down, we'll get a sharp left turn. It doesn't look like we'll get much balloon control. That's okay, we know that one. So let's go ahead and ease down just a little bit. Just there to start to feel that wind. It's going to be a little bit calmer here. So that last one is a little much.
Yep.
Feels calm. That's fine. And this clump of trees over here is the new red area for Bling the Dog.
Okay.
And so that's my motivation to get down is to start to get this left turn. And we can hop up over the power lines and find that road wherever it is, and then we can land up. that's a nice little vent. One hand. Okay, so it's leveled out, so a little puff there. That's good. And so now we've got this track that's taking us sort of right towards Bloom, but we anticipate that as we drop down, we'll get more of a left turn. Now, in an ideal world, we would just gradually ease down and get that left turn, and we know that road goes all the way north to south. The concern is the power lines. You don't want to be descending over the power lines. We actually want to let it descend a little bit. Go ahead and we'll set that left turn up, and we'll just make sure that we're staying above the power lines. Pretty good track right towards the power lines. We can see the wires now. That confirms that there genuinely are wires there. Top of that parabola. So I'm happy enough with this track until we cross the power lines. What do you think?
I think that we're on a good track.
Okay. The challenge in this kind of a situation is we really don't want to be any higher, right? Because if we do, we'll get a right turn and head towards that PZ.
Right.
But we don't want to be any lower because we're plenty low over these power lines. So the precision in this environment gets a little bit tighter. Now what we do know is if we get up too high and we miss this field, we have other options.
Right.
And when we land, as a principle, we have a few different priorities. The first priority, go ahead. The first priority we have is we want a safe landing. And that generally refers to obstacles.
Sure.
And not hitting the ground too hard.
Right.
You know, so we're not going to hit power lines or trees or houses and all that kind of stuff. So that's the first priority. The second priority is we want it to be accessible.
Sure.
So the crew can get in.
Right.
And then the third priority, we want it to be graceful.
Right. So safe, accessible, and graceful.
Correct. Okay, just a little bit. So now what that's doing is just maintaining temperature, that little puff.
Sure.
Like that. because that's going to maintain and it's just going to keep you from having big swings.
Right.
Okay, one more. So now we're perfectly level, and now we're keeping just enough heat to have a little bit of a climb.
Right.
There's nothing out here that's going to create an orographic wind that we have to worry about, and we're also not going to fuck with it.
Right.
Okay, one more. Nice. And so we've seen them, we've crossed them with a climbing attitude.
Yep.
And so now we've got to, the temptation is, well, let's just drop. We've got to give it enough space that
Sure,
we could
we don't
land
get blown
safely
back
if we
into
had to
it.
get blown back.
Right.
Another one. 'Cause now you feel yourself descending on the backside a little bit. If we gotta shift back,
Right.
that would be sketchy.
Right.
Okay, Travis, we're pretty confident about this field. We're going to descend and just kind of keep ground tracking to the east until we get to that road. Feel free to come on in. And you see he's in the field.
Because he's a badass.
Yep. So you may have heard the phrase aviate, navigate, communicate.
Okay.
So aviate means fly the fucking balloon. And you never stop doing that. That's always top priority.
Sure.
The second piece is navigate. Steer, think about where you're going to go, that kind of thing. And then communicate.
Right.
If you're super busy flying because it's a
Right.
wonky day, you
Right.
may not be able to have time to navigate.
Right.
And you'll take whatever you can get.
Right.
If you're navigating and you're busy, you may not be able to communicate.
Right.
That's okay. It's a lower priority. Where we see people making mistakes is, for example, driving the crew and forgetting to fly the balloon.
Right.
Right traffic at Junction.
Okay, now let's go ahead and start a descent, because if we were to descend right now and we felt like we were going back to them, we could make an aggressive landing with
Right.
plenty of space.
Right.
So now we'll just ease it right down. There is a fence out here somewhere, but I don't know where it is. We'll see it. Okay, so I feel like you should turn around so you can see what you're
Yeah.
There you go.
Tower 82 Delta's approach for 25 seconds.
Just a little bit of cooling here,
5 left.
just to keep that oscillation to a minimum. Okay, so don't worry about accessibility. He's going to drive down a road, but go ahead and shoot a landing out here somewhere, wherever you feel comfortable. Travis, we're going to practice a landing out here. Go ahead and stay on the road. That's too much. That's okay. Nope. now go ahead and put some tension on that vent so that you got to feel that you're sort of at the
Yeah.
point of almost opening it.
Yeah.
Okay, and burn. And burn. Now vent. Remember, you're hanging on. You got the arm around. Nice. Okay, and now go ahead and let that up. Let's see if we can recover. If we had the scoop pointing the right way, it would fix itself. I think we're done. What do you think? Nice
I
landing.
don't want to burn the scoop.
Nice landing.
Thank you.
Slid right in there. Okay, so now what we want to do, if we're going to commit to being done, we're going to go ahead and turn the fuel,
Oh, yes.
and then I like to, if we can't, get the scoop off the burner. And that's fine, right, we'll do it. Sorry, Travis, we lied. We're out here for good. Nice job, man.
Thank you.
What do you think?
I think I have a great pilot instructor.
Okay, so now you want to shut down all your fuel. That might not have been on at all. Okay. There you go. Now notice that you flew mostly off of this side. So this one's down to 20.
Right.
This one's down to about 20.
Right.
This one was down to about 10%, and then I turned that one off. Okay.
Gotcha.
Just because I didn't want your pilot tank to get
Sure. Empty. Right.
And so generally what I like to do is fly them both down roughly in parallel. But this
Right.
tank first, and this tank second, this tank third, and this tank last. That way you don't ever exhaust your pilot tank. Now it does not take very much fuel to sustain a pilot tank.
Right.
It's really
Right.
not, but I don't want to get into the, oh shit, I forgot to pay
Yes.
attention and now
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
bone dry.
Right.
The nice thing about the manifold is these will cross fill.
Okay. Even for the pilot, or you just mean for the regular guy?
It doesn't matter because if this tank is full and this one's empty, if you open
Oh,
them
I
both,
see what you're saying.
this-
It'll level out.
that's right.
Right. I got
And that was why I turned this one on, and now that this one is fuller, it's
Right.
both a little over 20.
Sure,
Does that make
sure.
sense?
Yeah.
Okay. Let's hop out and help this. Nice job, man. That was really good. Okay, and it is 1 hour and 1 minute. I
Woohoo!
think we'll call it an hour. What do you think?
I think so.
Okay, so let's see. They've got the crown line. So I'm going to go ahead. We're completely backwards, right?
Yeah.
Okay, that's fine. So what I'm going to do is let's lay this down, and then let's sort of mess with the envelope to get the red lines up and get it straight but upside down. Make sense? As opposed to twisted. Hey guys, I'm going to lay this basket down and then you can have a few more feet.
Cold propane through this?
Don't really need to. And right now is sort of a risky time to do that. We're pretty sure it's not lit, but you run